everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing a little bit of a different video than what I have done in the past style-wise. The concept for this video is that back in December, while all the Goodreads Choice Award stuff was going around, my friend Scout messaged me asking if I would want to do a video in January highlighting some 2023 graphic novel releases, since the Goodreads Choice Awards had decided to eliminate the graphic novel and comic category from the Goodreads Choice Awards. I'm not a Goodreads girly, but I love a good graphic novel, so I said yes, and I will link Scout's channel down below, and if I remember to, when her version of this video goes up, I will link that as well. I don't know if I'll remember, but I'll definitely link her channel, and then you can hop over and see if it's there. And usually for a video like this, I would do some sort of reading vlog, but with something as short as a graphic novel, it didn't make a lot of sense to do what I usually do, where I talk at the beginning of it, update halfway through, and then talk at the end. It just didn't feel like this medium lent to that style of video. So this one's going to be pretty straightforward, and each clip is just going to be me talking about each of the books. I'll put timestamps down below if you want to, like if there's specific ones you're interested in and just want to go ahead and check those out, feel free to do that. I tried to read a fairly wide variety of graphic novels in this video. So I have like graphic nonfiction, a lot of YA, an adult graphic novel. I wanted there to be a lot of variety. That is what you're about to see. I hope you enjoy it. I read some graphic novels that I had been anticipating for a while, and then some that were not even on my radar until maybe like the day I picked them up. Of course, like the books that we know would be on the Goodreads Choice Awards, if they had kept that category, like obviously the most recent installment of Lore Olympus would have been on there. I imagine the latest volume of Monstrous would have been on there. I believe Heartstopper came out after the cutoff for the Goodreads Choice Awards, so it probably would have been on there, but I think you can guess like the given ones. I didn't read those ones for this project, mostly because they're all so deep in the series. Like Monstrous would have been volume 8, and I do not feel qualified to give you a synopsis for all of Monstrous because it's so in-depth. But I think we can all agree those are books that definitely would have been on the list if that category had been here this year. So even though I'm not a Goodreads user and I casually vote in the Goodreads Choice Awards, I hope that, you know, the one Goodreads employee sees that this category was really missed for 2023 and that they put it back for 2024. But we'll see. Who knows? Who knows if they even care. Without any more preamble from me, we're just gonna get into the rest of this video. All right, book one is done. I started with the reread. I read The Princess and the Grilled Cheese Sandwich last year when it first came out because I had heard the title previously on, I think, Instagram, or maybe it was on a podcast. I don't know. Who knows? I can just consume so much book related media. I can't even keep track of where I hear about things, but I thought the title sounded adorable and I knew it was going to be queer in some way, and so I knew it was going to be beloved in my house just based on those two things. So I was excited to reread it. When I read it initially, I gave it a 4, and I think that rating still holds true. But this is, gosh, set in SeaWorld, where everything is named after cheese, which is pretty delightful. So this kingdom is called Fromage, and everybody who lives in the kingdom of Fromage has a cheese name. We'll get into that more. shortly. But the basic setup for this is that Camembert, or Cam for short, is the only daughter of a count who is ill and dying. And in this world, their societal rules are very similar to like historical British societal rules. So women can't own anything. They don't have a lot of agency in their choices. That is all the same. So because Cam is a girl, she can't inherit her father's estate or his money, and he's been trying to get her to get married, but she's gay and isn't interested in having a husband. So Cam's father decides that instead of forcing his only child to go into a marriage where she will just be miserable, that instead, when he dies, Cam is going to move as far away from her hometown as she possibly can, and she's going to pass herself off as his son. And so that's what she does. Her father dies, and she and her former nursemaid, Feta, move to the capital of Fromage, and she begins to pass herself off as Count Camembert. And while she is there, she quickly meets and befriends the Princess of Fromage, Princess Brie, and her two best friends, Ricotta and Gorgonzola. The names just make this. And this is a really delightful mix of historical-ish and modern. So the clothes will be for the most part, like there's a couple curveballs in here, but the clothes for the most part will be pretty standard historical wear. Okay, focus. Okay, pretty standard. But then there will be a scene where Cam is at home and is just chilling in like boxers and an oversized t-shirt, or like Feta will come in to Cam's bedroom to talk to her about something, and like she's just like super casually like playing her Switch on the bed. But there's no other technology. Like they don't have phones, they don't have cars. Like everyone has a horse-drawn carriage, but then like inexplicably Cam has a Switch. So like it's a book that does not take itself too seriously, which I love. I love that it's light and fun and not caught up in grown-up things. Like it's a very, very fun book. I wish there was a little bit more depth to it, especially because I think Muniz does such a great job of talking about gender and gender expression and how fluid that expression can be, and like watching Cam become more comfortable with like the fluidity of her gender expression is really fun. And so I wish there was like a little bit more depth to that part of the conversation. Muniz does such a good job with that fluidity. Like I just wish there was a little bit more depth to it, but I do think it's a really wonderful YA romance. It was really fun to reread this after it having been a while. Like I think I read this last June, so not quite a year, but you know, over 6 months is a pretty significant amount of time. So if you have not read The Princess and the Grilled Cheese Sandwich and you're looking for a light, frothy, fun YA romance, I would definitely recommend this graphic novel. Okie dokie. So I finished The Faint of Heart by Carolyn Wilson. Let's talk about it. This is YA graphic novel, and it's sci-fi, and in the story we're following, gosh, I already forgot her name. Following June, who is a high school student, and she's an artist. And in this version of reality, we have, I'm just gonna put the picture up here because the library copy is so shiny. In this world, someone called the scientist has figured out how to remove people's hearts and have them remain alive. And when your heart is removed, you don't feel sadness, anxiety, anger, frustration, like all those negative emotions go away, but then all the positive emotions go away as well. But people as a whole have decided that that is a trade-off that they are okay with. And so June is the only one left in her family unit, in her school, in her group of friends who has not given up her heart. And The art is really interesting because the world is largely black and white, and June is the only pop of color for a lot of the pages. And so that color is really used to show feeling and show emotion. And I think it's very impactful the way Carolyn Wilson uses it. So you get a little bit of flashback in the beginning of what life was like prior to this discovery. And everybody in June's life wants her to have her heart removed. And so her parents actually schedule an appointment for her at the hospital, and she goes to the hospital but doesn't end up going to her appointment because she doesn't want to have her heart taken out. And while she is there, she finds a heart abandoned in an alley. And then that leads her to try to find who this heart belongs to. And I really liked it. I gave it a 4.25 because I really like the art style. I think it's stunning, but there were a couple of flaws for me. I think this story could have been longer. I know I'm usually not the person who says, oh, a book should be longer. It's usually the opposite. But in this case, I think this could have been twice its size. There was so much that Carolyn Wilson could have delved into, and instead the story stayed pretty surface level and a little bit predictable just once you get to finding out the scientist's motivation for discovering that she could remove hearts. That felt predictable. I mean, and maybe not for its intended audience, but for an adult reader, it was a little bit predictable. And like I said, I felt like there could have been so much nuance. There could have been so much more discussion. And it stayed pretty surface level. My other complaint is that sometimes it was really hard to follow the flow of conversation because I'm going to see if I can find a good example of it. That's not a spoiler. But because of the way Wilson draws the conversations, so it's these lines following the text. And sometimes, like, it follows in a linear fashion, but there were a couple times where it didn't, and it was hard to figure out. Like, I would read conversations in the wrong order and only realize it maybe 3 or 4 speech bubbles in, and then I'd have to go back and like track it a different way. And that would be an easy problem to fix. But yeah, I just found sometimes it was harder to track conversations. Overall, I think this was really a cool idea, a cool concept. This is Wilson's debut, so I'm very interested in what else she produces because I really liked this concept. And like I said, I really loved the art. I think the art is really emotional and impactful, and I just really liked all the things she had to say in this book. All right, so we have the first 5-star of this vlog, which is very exciting. It was Bea Wolf by Jack Weinersmith and Boulay. Okay, it's very shiny. This was such a delight and kind of a surprise. I had a feeling it was going to be really good because I have seen a lot of librarians talk about this book in the end of the year wrap-ups for 2023, and it was on a couple of best of lists in the graphic novel category. Like, I think Publisher Weekly had highlighted this, and somebody else did too, but I can't remember which publication it was. But this is an adaptation of Bea Wolf for children, and it was so cool. I loved the art style, and I want to show you my favorite one. I want this little pumpkin girl. Like, look at her. I want a tattoo of this little girl with her pumpkin hat and blowing her bubble gum and with her scarf and her black dress. I just loved it so much. So Weinersmith took Bea Wolf and adapted it. So, but instead of a man fighting a monster, it's children fighting an adult who wants to turn them all into grown-ups. And it was so fun. The language was really cool too. This would make a really excellent read aloud, which is not usually how it works with graphic stories. I find as a parent who has read a lot of graphic novels out loud that reading graphic novels a lot is exhausting in a way, but the way this is written, where it's not so much panels as illustrations, it would not have been tiring to read. And the way the narrative was constructed, I feel like would make for a really great read aloud, because it starts with, listen to the lives of the long ago kids, the world fighters, the parent unminding kids, the improper, the politeness proof, the unbowed bully crushers, the bedtime breakers, the raspberry blowers, fighters of fun killers, fearing nothing, fated for fame. It was just, it's so cool. Absolutely delightful. There's a really cool author's note in the back where he talks about the history of Bea Wolf as a poem and what we know about it and what we don't know about it, and then what he did to kind of preserve the feeling of Bea Wolf while making it accessible and exciting to children. Super good. This is going to be the one to top from here on out. I don't know that anything else that I have selected is going to be a bigger hit than Bea Wolf, but we'll see. I finished Washington's Gay General. This is by Josh Turillo and Levi Hastings. This is a graphic biography about Baron von Steuben, who was one of George Washington's generals during the Revolutionary War. And this is a person in history that not a lot of people know about, and he was very openly gay in a time when that was really dangerous to be. And I think if you like Hamilton the musical and how accessible that makes certain aspects of history, then I think you would also really like this. I'm not sure what age group this is intended for. I'm not sure if this is supposed to be an adult graphic nonfiction or if it's supposed to be YA. This is structured is Josh and Levi are telling the reader about Baron von Steuben's life, but it's from a very, it has a very casual tone, and they have even like inserted themselves into the panels talking about their own history as queer men and their own experiences, and then how modern ideas are connected to this figure from the past. And so there are points where the way they're explaining things makes it seem like it's intended for a younger audience. Not because I don't want to say because they simplify a lot of things. Like the way they explain things, it sometimes feels like they're talking to a younger person or maybe to an adult who has very little contact with anybody in the queer community and also doesn't pay attention to current events at all. Maybe, I'm not sure. So I'm not sure who the intended audience is for, but I did really enjoy this. They make history really accessible. They make it really interesting. They call von Steuben America's founding daddy, which I thought was hilarious. And it basically talks about this man who grew up in Prussia and was in the military there, and then the path that led him to immigrating to the United States and serving under Washington. And the aspect I found most interesting outside of his experiences as a gay man was what it is like to be an immigrant in a country that from the get-go is so anti-immigrant, and even towards somebody who helped America win the Revolutionary War. So, and they touch on slavery, and they touch on the treatment of indigenous people. So they very much do not gloss over America's really violent and harmful history, which I appreciate. I'm glad that they're not trying to cover up other parts of history that would definitely still have impacted the thing that they're talking about. So I do think it's a really good book. I wish I knew the audience for it. But I had a really good time with it, and I did hand it to my twins, and they have both read it, and they liked it a lot as well. There is obviously talk of sex, and you know, there's a lot of naked male booties in this, but not explicitly drawn. I mean, if you go to any museum, like, they're gonna see more butts in the museums than they do in this book. But it's definitely, you know, something to take into account. You gotta know if you're gonna give it to a younger reader. I think you definitely have to, like, know the younger reader that you're giving it to, and like what their maturity level is, and like what kind of content they're gonna be okay with. But yeah, I did really like this. So if you are looking to do some more graphic nonfiction and you like American history, check it out. I just finished Goth by Kate Leth. This is a YA graphic novel about a girl named Liv, and it's set in the early 2000s, and Liv and her mom and her dad are moving to a new town. She's starting a new school. Her mom is getting a new job, and Liv just wants to have friends and be accepted, and, you know, all the things that, like, a teen wants. I would recommend do not read the synopsis of this if you pick it up, because I didn't. So I didn't really know what it was about. I read it, and then I read the synopsis, and the synopsis gives away every single thing that happens in this book. So do not read the synopsis. Whichever copy editor did it, not their best work. This, I thought, was really well done. The author tackles a lot of hard topics. There is predatory grooming content warning in here. I think the book does a good job of tackling that topic and giving any teens who read this book almost like a script to use if they have had an experience before, or if that starts to happen to them. This book does take, like, as an adult reader, takes you on a little bit of a journey, because it's really easy to identify with Liv. Like, for anybody who's been a teenager, like, the things that she feels are so nostalgic's the wrong word, but I think you'll know what I mean. But the book takes you on such a roller coaster, because, you know, it'll be like fine, normal, regular teenage stuff, and then there'll be somebody that Liv knows where the behavior is not great, and so your concern goes up, and you start to get anxious, and then the book will shift gears a little bit, and then you'll relax, because it'll go back into, like, standard teen stuff, and then that person will pop up again, and your anxiety will go again. So definitely a roller coaster of a book, but I really liked the art style. I like how illustrator, like, how they express emotions in their art, and I just thought Liv was so relatable. And it's just so hard to make friends, and then, you know, the way people who are supposed to be your friends will use you to, like, manipulate you so that they can have what they want. And then it's just, I don't know if I'm doing a good job of explaining this, but I really liked it. Even though it's a little heavier, I think it's really well done, and I'm really glad that I read it. This was not even on my radar when I started this project, but this is a graphic novel that one of my twins had picked up at the bookstore not too long ago, and they were very sweet and deigned to allow me to read their graphic novel. Also, as a teen who in the early 2000s spent a lot of time at the mall with her friends, this gave me a lot of nostalgia. So for the final book for this vlog, I read Roaming by Jillian Tamaki and Mariko Tamaki. I really wanted to have at least one adult graphic novel in this selection, and this is adult/new adult. So Roaming is about two high school friends who are in their first year of university, and they've gone to separate colleges, and they meet in New York City before spring break to reunite and travel together. Danny brings along her friend Fiona, who she has met at college, and Fiona slowly derails the entire trip. And I both loved this and hated this. And I loved it because I think this will be so reminiscent for pretty much anybody who has, you know, had that experience of going to college and then seeing your friends that you went to high school with in the midst of that and the relationship being different, and you know, you're not really sure how the relationship is different or if you can do anything about it, but it is different. And then I also hated it because Fiona is so freaking pretentious, and I think everyone has had a friend like that, and it was borderline triggering for me because I had friends like that in high school, or I had friends like that in college, and it took me back to a place I was not prepared to go back to. Whew, yeah. But I thought this was very nostalgic and earnest without being saccharine. This is also a little bit of like a love story to New York City. I did this with a college friend where one spring break we went to New York for the week, and we were so poor. Like, we took the Greyhound there, we stayed in a hostel, they stay in a hostel while they're in New York City, and you're just trying to do as much as you can in a city when you have very little money and everything is so expensive. But I loved how Jillian and Mariko portrayed the city and highlighted different parts of it. I didn't love this art style as much as I've loved the art style in other books that I've read. That's a very subjective thing. Art, obviously. So they use this very kind of neutral palette for the book with lots of blues and blacks and tans. So it is definitely a very calming art style, even while there's a lot of messy stuff, messy relationship stuff going on. So yeah, I don't know if I'd recommend this because I kind of hated the place it took me to, but I also recognize that this is really, really good. This is a very, very good graphic novel. So with that, we're at the end of this video. If I was going to rate these books in terms of enjoyment, which is hard because I feel like I did a really good job of picking books that I really enjoyed. I did DNF one book. I had picked up a digital copy of Layers from my library, and this is a memoir that was translated from French into English, and it was fine. I thought the beginning was really funny. It starts when she's a kid, and she and her sister adopt kittens, and I really liked that part. But then when it got into her being in like college age, I lost interest a little bit. But other than that, I felt like this was really successful. So in terms of enjoyment, I would say Faint of Heart, followed by Roaming. I guess not followed, we're going from least enjoyment to most enjoyed. Washington's Gay General, Goth, and then, of course, obviously, my absolute favorite was Bea Wolf. Oh my goodness, this is a heavy stack. So, yeah, I feel like this is pretty good because we have YA, adult, nonfiction, YA, and middle grade. So, you know, not too shabby in terms of range. That officially brings us to the end of this video. Let me know what you think of this style of video, because like I said at the beginning, I usually do this more vlog style, but for this one it's just straightforward reading updates. So let me know if you have a preference down in the comments below. Let me know if there's a 2023 graphic novel release that you think I should have read in this video as well, because I definitely am going to keep reading graphic novels. I didn't read as many last year as I would have hoped to, so I'm hoping that this kind of kickstarts me into continuing to read more throughout this year. Like if you liked it, and subscribe if you're interested in seeing more, and I will talk to you all in the next one.